Welcome and thank you for joining us this afternoon for our fifth installment of the Leaders in Education series. My name is Dave Kall. I'm the office managing member of the Cleveland office here at McDonald Hopkins. And today we are pleased and delighted to have with us Margaret Mitchell, who is the CEO and president of the YWCA of Greater Cleveland. So thank you for joining us. Couple housekeeping issues to get out of the way before we start. If you're here in the audience in Cleveland and if you have a question, please write the question down on the paper that's at your seat. We will then have someone collect them and they can bring them up to me. If you're on the webcast, please click the button that says question, write your question, submit it, and they will be brought to me here at the desk, and we'll try to get to everybody. I know one of the negative feedbacks we have about this program is that I don't always get through all the questions, and I apologize for that. Some people have submitted questions beforehand, and we have worked those into the program, but I'll do my best to get through all the questions as quickly as we can. But let's get started. A lot of people have wondered why McDonald Hopkins is so focused on education. And I'll tell you this, there's three principal reasons why. Number one, Northeast Ohio is an undereducated workforce. Number two, an undereducated workforce creates or leads to poverty. And then the third reason is a little selfish. If you think about it, if you have an undereducated workforce, it's hard to attract and retain businesses in Northeast Ohio. So part of what we need to do is create that educated workforce so that service companies like ours has work because there's more businesses out there that's generating work. So that's why we identified it as a problem. But we did more than just identify it as a problem. We decided to do something about it. Here at McDonald Hopkins, we've always been involved in the community, and we've always been involved in community initiatives. But one of the things that we sat there and thought about was, education is core to what we do, and it's very important that we have an educated workforce. So we've made it a firm-wide initiative in all of our markets to focus on education and things that we can do in order to help with education in the markets that we serve. And to that end, in 2017, we got involved with the Cleveland Indians. We're one of their community partners. Without the Indians, there would not be baseball or softball within the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. And part of the program that enticed us to join them was the fact that that program focuses on education and health and fitness of youth in Northeast Ohio. So that's why we got behind that. But then we moved on and we got really involved with Say Yes to Education through College Now. And I'm happy to say that we just completed our second go around with WKYC in connection where we were the lead corporate sponsor in connection with Mentor Monday. So if you haven't signed up, please do. It's a great way to give back to the community. So a little plug there for College Now and Say Yes. And then, but enough about McDonald Hopkins. Let's focus on Margaret Mitchell. That's why we're here today. For those that are new to the program, the way that these are set up, I go through the past, present, and future because I think it gives a little insight to Margaret and will give us a little bit more about what we're trying to accomplish through the YWCA. So prior to beginning and becoming the president and CEO of the YWCA, Margaret had a very distinguished and rewarding career in various organizations. I don't know if anyone knows, and John Werchafter, please don't chime in, but Margaret was an Associated Press award-winning journalist. She was managing editor of today's Dallas Woman magazine, and she was also the author of 12 books. What did you do in your spare time? But then she moved. After that successful started business, she became the VP of Sales and Marketing for Mentium Corporation. Mentium was a global leader in the talent development and corporate mentoring space. But then Margaret decided to take her talents to the nonprofit world, and we couldn't be more grateful for that. So Margaret became the VP of Big Brothers Big Sisters in Lone Star in Dallas, Texas, where while she was at Big Brothers and Big Sisters, she also served on the National Leadership Council as a founding member of the Diversity Committee. And then, as luck would have it, in 2017, she heard so many good things about the weather here in Cleveland that she moved from Dallas to Cleveland, Ohio, where she became the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Cleveland. Then in May of 2011, Margaret joined the YWCA as the president and CEO and has been there ever since. So in my mind, it's pretty clear that you've had a distinguished past. And my brief introduction really does not do it justice. So one of my first questions for you would be, what else do we need to learn about Margaret Mitchell that could tell us a little bit about you?
Well, as you heard, I am a Clevelander by choice, and you can't make me go back to Texas, so I really enjoy being here with my family. I love reading. I'm always reading something or another. I am a gardener. As soon as the weather breaks, I will pull into my driveway, kick off my shoes, and start weeding. I really find that it's my therapy, if you will. And I just am really sort of a homebody and a family person, just really been married for 35 years and have 3 young adult children who are well into their careers now, and just love hearing what's happening in their lives.
Great. So do you take jobs on the side? So if I had some gardening to do, would you be willing to do that? No, just kidding. So you've made the transition from the for-profit to the nonprofit world. You know, that wasn't probably easy, but what was the hardest part of that transition?
I think one of the hardest parts is just the nonprofit image. You know, we tend to think of people in the nonprofit space as being less skilled. We have this image that, they don't care about this or they don't care about that. And, none of that could be farthest from the truth. You know, we are dedicated professionals, and it is an amazing field to work in when you have your hands and your feet tied. And so we do so much every single day with so little. And so that's really one of the biggest challenges, is the misconception people have about the nonprofit community, often that we aren't data driven, that there isn't a high degree of professionalism, that we are there only because we have passion, but really no strong intellect. I think that really hampers the field.
That's interesting. So let's stay on that topic for a minute, between the for-profit versus nonprofit. What would you say is the greatest difference between those two worlds? I mean, you lived them both, you experienced them both. What's the biggest difference?
I think just, resources are certainly a big difference. Technology is one example. We are constantly challenged with trying to keep pace with technology. People often want to give us leftover technology, and I'm not sure what you would do with that, but we can't support the latest technology when somebody gives you a computer. But we're always being, given something, and really we need the best of technology to be able to do our jobs. And it is very low on the list of what people want to fund. We'll often push IT in, and it'll come back, scratched off. Oh, somebody can give that to you. And so that is a huge challenge, certainly.
I would imagine the financial concerns are still there. They're just different, because for profit, you're mostly focusing on shareholder profit and return, versus on the nonprofit, you still need to raise the money in order to do what you want to do.
You still need to raise the money to do that. And the reality is, fundraising is that gender and race has an impact on fundraising. And so we could look at boys' schools versus girls' schools. Who outpaces who in fundraising? We could look at a lot of male boys organizations versus girls organizations, and again, we'll see a disparity in terms of the money raised. And when it comes to issues and agencies that are explicitly working in the area of racial justice, of the monies from foundations that go to organizations explicit around issues of racism, the percentage of funding is 1%. And that's from a 2014 study, the last study that looked at the issue. And so when your mission is eliminating racism and empowering women, we're getting the slice of the slice of the slice. And so resources are certainly, a challenge, and you can't use all those realities to hinder you. And we've been fortunate in our community to have significant growth over my tenure over the last 9 years. When I entered the YWCA, we were a $2.7 million agency. We're about $8 million now, and we are certainly very much focused on remaining sustainable and strong in terms of our financial resources. But it's a fight every single day.
One last question on the difference between the for-profit and the nonprofit. What did you learn when you were working in the for-profit world that you were able to take to the nonprofit world? What lessons did you learn that have gone to the other side, as they say?
Well, I learned, everything. Really, being a nonprofit organization is a tax designation. But all of the business principles that exist in all of your organizations exist in the nonprofit space as well. And so, we're very much always looking at best practice models, as are you. So there's really not as much difference as you might think between the two organizations. People are people. Your business thrives on people, and our business thrives on people, and helping people to grow and be successful.
Okay. Well, I've got to ask this next question. So it's 2007. Great time to be thinking about moving. What made you come to Cleveland besides the weather? It's just Dallas, Texas versus Cleveland in 2007.
Well, most of our friends thought that we had really lost our minds and were very, very worried. I was taking late night calls from friends who offered to take our children. We had 2 children who were in high school and one that was a freshman in college. And they just thought, we had just gone off the deep end, and they were coming in while perhaps we came to our senses. But we were looking at several opportunities, and took a vote in our family between Charlotte, North Carolina, and Cleveland, Ohio. And Cleveland,
so it was the weather.
Cleveland won. It was. We really felt like we could have an impact here, make a difference, and we kept seeing small little glimmers. And the city is such a jewel. You go down these streets and you still see the little brick cobblestone streets, and there was a lot to do here, and we felt like we could be impactful, and wanted people to know what just a wonderful city Cleveland is and was. But the reception in Cleveland was interesting at that time, I have to say. People would say, "Why did you come here?" And that was an alarming thing. It's like, oh my, is there some secret, booby hatch that they're gonna, throw us down? It was just when you move to Dallas, and we lived in Plano, Texas, which considers itself a bedroom community of Dallas. But when you move into the Dallas Metroplex, people say, "What took you so long?" Mm. And when we came to Cleveland, people said, "Why did you come here?" So it was a little unsettling, and it was just fascinating. You know, Plano is a bedroom community of about 400,000, and my kids would come home and say, "These Shaker kids think they live in a city. Someone should tell them it's a neighborhood." It's like, it's a city, sort of.
Well, that's great. Well, we're glad you made the decision to come here. So let's fast forward a little bit to 2011.
Yep.
So what made you change from Big Brothers Big Sisters to the YWCA?
Well, I had been with Big Brothers Big Sisters for a total of 8 years. I was with the agency, as you mentioned, in Dallas. It was the largest Big Brothers Big Sisters in the country at the time that I left, and I came to Cleveland to support the local agency here, and I really felt like I was ready to take on a new challenge. The YWCA was certainly a multifaceted nonprofit agency with different things going on, things I hadn't done before and didn't know about, and I love learning new things. I love challenges, and the YWCA had some challenges, and I like it when it's hard and messy and you have to figure out all the puzzle pieces to make it go. And so that was really attractive for me, and they really did welcome me, and so it's been a wonderful experience.
Great. Well, part of this is to educate our audience as well, and one of the things that I think a lot of us don't know a lot about the YWCA. So why don't you give us a little history of the YWCA and its involvement in education? I think that would be helpful to set the stage for moving on to the present.
Well, I love telling people that we are not married to the YMCA. We got divorced. They got the money, we got the kids. This is sad but true. And, we were the 7th YWCA to be formed in the United States here in Cleveland. A group of women came together. Many of them are prominent names that you will know, and formed the YWCA. And we were very much focused on young women, particularly young women who were with child. And this was over 150 years ago. And we are very proud of our history. We were formed in 1858, so just 3 years after the end of the Civil War. Mail was delivered in Cleveland by Pony Express at the time of the founding of the YWCA. And we, at that time, in addition to working with young women who were unmarried and with child, we were also one of the very first organizations to begin what is now known as public kindergarten. And so we've always had a passion around early childhood education.
I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball here. So based on that history, though, what's been the hardest part of getting out there and getting the community to buy in with what you're doing?
One of the things that is important to know when you're around for 150 years is that you have to keep being responsive to the community. And so over our 150-year history, we've changed ourselves, we've changed our focus and the way we deliver services in order to really meet the needs of the people of Cleveland. So we've had several iterations, several lives, if you will, during our history in order to do that. And today, can I say a little bit about what we do today?
Sure. It's your stage. You're free to say what you'd like.
Today we are very much focused on working with young women, primarily young women who have aged out of the foster care system. So we were really the first to have both housing and services, but without a prescription. So our services do not mandate that you do X, Y, and Z on any given day in order to stay in our program. We meet people exactly where they are and support them with the direction they want to drive in. And so when we entered into that, that was really a new way of thinking, 10 years ago and working. Our community at the time was very much focused on a recipe of a program that ran for a certain amount of time, and then you graduated and flew off. And so we didn't do that. We knew that relationships really were going to be key. Relationships are how people are successful. Relationships are key to your work, and they're key to our work as well. And so we have become a leader in the space nationally in terms of young people who've aged out of foster care. We also are a leader in an initiative in town to end and prevent youth homelessness that's known as A Place for Me. And we're really excited about the progress and the work that we're making at a structural level to make changes so that we don't have young people homeless. And we really believe that we can arrive at a place where homelessness is rare and brief. We do have a preschool, which I know we'll talk more about. We do a lot of work in the space of women's leadership. We have a leadership institute for women, primarily women, or especially women who are looking to advance their career, women who are looking to, are in a space of being new supervisors or taking on new roles. So that's where our work in women's leadership lands. And of course we do quite a bit of racial justice work to support our community.
Great. Well, you helped me transition to the present, so I appreciate that. Because I want to move on to the present and talk about what you're doing in the early childhood space. And one of the things, and I got to get this right, you've done a great job coming up with a new system where you've transformed from the traditional preschool model into, and I want to get this right, that's why I'm going to read this, an unduplicated trauma-informed therapeutic model.
Yes.
So how did you do that?
Well, we had a preschool like other preschools you see in the community, and there wasn't any really distinguishing factors between our preschool and others. And we knew that other organizations had 10 preschools, 30 preschools, and were in the preschool business at scale. And we had one preschool, and so we kept asking ourselves, what is it that is missing from the community that the community needs? And one of the drivers that helped us to arrive there was our preschool finances. We were always running at a deficit, and so we thought about what we could do that would meet a need that would be unduplicated, and as a result, would that be something that we could seek additional support for and make sure that we were operating with being well capitalized in order to be at the highest level of quality. So all of those things sort of came together, and we knew that there were, at the time, hundreds. In most years, we're looking at 400 and as high as 500 children under the age of 5, so 5 and under, that are homeless in our community with the parent. And so we wanted to be able to begin being a model for other preschools. We knew we could not meet the full need, but we wanted to become a model, and we wanted to begin supporting families who were experiencing temporary crisis.
So I guess I should ask the logical question, what do you mean by the trauma-informed therapeutic model?
So it is a model that it's the way we build our staffing model. It is the approach we take in that model, and it's the way we deliver services. So being trauma-informed, first you are trauma aware, being aware that there is trauma, and then you are trauma informed. How am I going to change my practices and my policies? And then you are trauma responsive. The way you deliver and do everything is there to support individuals that have experienced trauma, which also includes your organization, your members of your team, right? And trauma is, in its simplest, I'm not a clinician, but I will tell you that it is moving from asking someone what's wrong with you, right? You see a child acting out, and far too often the default is, what's wrong with that child? What's wrong with that community? What's wrong with those people? And it's a shift from that into what happened. What happened here? Mm-hmm. What happened to this child? What's happening with this family? How do we support this child and this family? And that shift changes everything.
I do like the words that you used, especially unduplicated. I guess the question would be, based on what I've read and seen, it's very successful in what you're doing. So why aren't others copying what you're doing?
Well, it is not an inexpensive model to pursue. It is a preschool with a budget of about $1 million annually. And I regularly get feedback from funders that say our model is too expensive. Now, quality is quality. And quality, we all know, has a cost to it. You don't deliver quality for pennies. There is a cost to quality, and we believe it is a pay now or pay later for our community. And that's why it's so important to remain invested in early childhood education. It really matters, and we have to help people understand where we are building quality. So all of our teachers have a 4-year degree. That's quality. We have early childhood mental health consultation in the model. That is an individual that works for us who is an independently licensed therapist. She is there to support the children, but it's not a therapist. We don't have a little couch to put the children on. It really is, her primary role is to support the parents and the teachers so that everybody is on the same page around how to support the child and the family going forward. We have a director of faculty because working with families that are experiencing high toxic trauma day in, day out is in fact traumatizing in and of itself. And so to keep your workforce healthy, you have to be able to support them on a daily basis. And so that's just a little glimpse of where we put our quality in. And we are a 5-star preschool, and very proud of that. 5 stars are what our families are looking for. Our families are looking for quality. All families are looking for quality. And so I wouldn't, it is a preschool that I would send my children to. I don't have anybody who's preschool age, but that is always my goal. What I recommend, support, engage, defend, and quality is just so huge.
So your model is definitely different. So how would your typical day compare to another preschool's day?
Yeah, I think the difference in our day really revolves around how we engage. So early in the morning, there is what we call a huddle, and it would be likened to a shift change in a hospital in which the nurse practitioners or the RNs are really doing that transfer knowledge of what happened on the previous shift. Our team comes together. We have transportation early in the morning that starts happening at about 6 a.m. And our transportation team, they hear children, a 3-year-old. If you want to know what's happening in a house, talk to a 3-year-old. And when you want to know what's happening with a family at a shelter, talk to a 3-year-old. And so our transportation team gets so much insight for where the children are and what's happening, and all of that gets transferred to our team. Another thing that makes us unique is our case management, our parent engagement support that we have. They are just so incredibly involved, and that transfer of knowledge happens in a huddle first thing in the morning, and it begins to set the day around being able to support the resiliency of the family. So often we look at our families, or we hear the word poverty, or we hear the word racism, and we immediately go to deficits. And I'm telling you, it's the assets that will just blow your mind. And so we are very much focused on supporting, from a strength-based position, the families, because they are the superheroes. If you've never parented in a homeless shelter, and you're not half the parent that the mothers and fathers that we see on a regular basis, what they do under incredible, challenging terms are just amazing. The way that they are able to support and love their children, encourage their children. Our attendance is, through the roof. It is just so impactful, and there's just so much for us to be able to learn. And so it's really an honor to be able to come alongside our families at a moment in which they are experiencing crisis.
So because this is such a unique model, how did you come up with the idea?
That's actually a great story. When we hired a consultant to help us take a look at the issue, and I had hired the consultant, David Cantor, and I was in Seattle, Washington with my colleague, our chief program officer, and we were at a homeless conference. And when we arrived at the conference, I was leaning towards getting out of the preschool business and shuttering the preschool. That's really where that was really sort of my decision. Other people are doing that. We need to move on to something else. But we need to walk through the exercise and see what we can do. So we're at this conference. There are about 2,000 people at the conference, and she and I go to the morning plenary, and we're sitting at a table, and I hear this voice in my head. David, really, I don't hear voices on a regular basis.
Okay, I was going to wonder.
But I am a deep woman of faith, and I heard this voice say to me 3 times very clearly, turn the preschool into a preschool for homeless children and families. And there was, pencils and notepads, little notepads on the table. And so I wrote that down for her, exactly how I heard it, and handed it to her. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, I think so. And literally 3 seconds later, this is a true story, 3 seconds later from the podium, the speaker said, good morning. 3 weeks ago, I was at a preschool for children, for homeless children and their families. And we nearly fell off our chairs. And I was just overcome with the confirmation that came so quickly. And I went back to my room and I got on my knees and I said, I will do whatever it is and work as hard as you need me to make this happen for your children.
That's a great story. Which kind of leads into one of the questions from the audience, which I would think is pretty insightful. So when you have an idea for a new, innovative, and maybe risky concept like this, what's the process you undertake to make a go, no-go decision?
Yeah, so I'm not shy about risk. I'm pretty comfortable with risk, but I'm also comfortable with change management, and so it does take a lot of support, a lot of information. We use typically a task force model in which we'll bring together both board members and members of the community to engage with a topic. We'll look at the analysis, so we'll look at financial data that we have, and then we'll take our mission and we'll do interviews, so the likelihood that this would get funded, who's interested, who's not, what kind of evidence is there that this works. We take all of that into consideration. We've, in our last strategic plan, done a bit more work to formalize this and create a decision matrix, sort of using this model. But really, that's how we do it. And it takes, it's a process. It doesn't come in 2 days. It can be for the preschool. We spent about 9 months in that process before we made the change.
Great. I'm getting a lot of questions from the audience about the process. And one of the things, I'm going to try to boil them down, so if I don't hit them all, I apologize. So a lot of the questions deal with, so there's a huge need in Northeast Ohio for providing this service to different children. So how do you make the decision? How many children are actually admitted to the program, and can you expand it?
I think we the YWCA are less interested in expanding and having other preschools. We are more interested in seeing the expansion happen with other preschools adopting elements of the model. So we know that CMSD has preschools now. They are really beginning to add in early childhood mental health consultation. They are talking about trauma, and their schools are becoming trauma informed. That's what we want to be able to see happen. And we believe that even in that, we still remain a leader. I mean, CMSD schools are not 12 months and year round. We're year round. We still believe our case management, hands down, is the best in the city. And I like when other people start creeping up on our heels, because it forces us to become stronger, better, smarter, and make sure that we stay in a leadership role with this work.
How many students do you have in the program?
We have 50 families, so 50 children, and their families that we work with on any given time. We have 4 classrooms and use a co-teacher model, so there are 2 teachers in each classroom, and we certainly could have a higher ratio if we wanted to, but again, we have kept our numbers in terms of those that we serve low, so that we can maintain high quality for our families.
And because there's such a need, how do you decide who gets admitted?
Families opt in. Families come to us wanting and looking and needing for what we have, and are excited about our model. And so that's who we're looking for. Like all preschools, quality preschools, you're looking for families that truly want to be involved. We have a very strong parent group that manages our field trips, identifies projects for us to work on, and so parent engagement is huge. And so we're looking for parents who really want to be a part of that process.
So there's a great need in our community for this, obviously. So what do you see as our assets, strengths, and obstacles in the local community for the whole early childhood education area?
You mentioned, say, yes to education earlier, and one of the areas where Cleveland really scored well in that other communities with say yes did not or do not have as an asset is our early childhood education structure and systems in place here in Cleveland. We have a strong continuum of early childhood partners. We are organized and work together, and so that was very important. And other communities wanted to be able to learn from the early childhood component and take that into their own community. And so we feel really proud about that. The data, and I do love data. The data shows now that we are sort of a year into say yes, they were able to, our early childhood system was able to look at all kindergartners in CMSD and then look at all kindergartners coming from high quality, so 3-star kindergarten, 3-star preschools and above were 5-star, and then they looked at high quality, high dose. So high dose means that children are in the preschool for more than 365 days, that there's high quality there, that it is sustained high quality, and that is where the YWCA falls. And these children outperform everyone else on the initial kindergarten readiness assessment that is made. And we're pretty darn tootin' proud of that. But we know quality. We know quality matters. We know that early childhood has an impact. You know when you have that child, and I have had a child who would take the phone apart and then be able to put it back together and have it work. And that gets nurtured in preschool and validated in preschool and encouraged, and as parents get supported that this is not a mischievous behavior, but a interested mind in and should encourage and be supportive of encouraging children, and to have to see that son and all of our children be able to live out their preschool dreams it's just amazing. It's just amazing.
Well, before moving off the present, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. So, Margaret, you were here this morning helping us kick off the 21-day challenge for the Racial Equity and Social Justice Challenge. It's something our firm is behind and supports. For those that don't know about it, why don't you just give a little spiel about that and also tell the audience how they can get involved with it.
Yeah, so you can go to the YWCA website and sign up for the challenge. And wherever you are in the country, you can do that. It is a virtual challenge every day during the 21 days, which happen Monday through Friday, so they're business days. You'll receive an email. So it's a virtual challenge, and in that email every day, there'll be an opportunity for you to engage in racial equity and social justice issues. Our first week is focused on voting and a little bit on the census. Our second week is on education. Our third week is criminal justice reform. And the last week is on public health and how all of these topics are impacted by racism today. And a year ago, when your mission is eliminating racism and empowering women, you might not think that you have to support your staff on a regular basis around these issues, but it is a muscle, and you have to keep learning and growing in this topic. And so we built the challenge a year ago to support our own staff and asked 2 other organizations to join us in the challenge, just to make it interesting and have some conversation. And at the last minute, I thought, oh, I wonder if anybody else wants to join the challenge with us. And as it turned out, on day 1 last year, we had 1,500 people join us, and on day 15, that grew to 2,500 people. And so we knew that there was a real appetite to engage with this topic. And today, when we launched, we had 2,647 people who had signed up for the challenge here in Cleveland, and we expect that to grow. We feel so passionate about the topic that we invited other YWCAs in Ohio and around the country. And we have about 10 who joined us this year, and I'm really passionate to see this as a national model. It's built on the book by Debbie Irving, Waking Up White. She said in the book that it takes 21 days to build a muscle, and so we did, and we give her credit and are grateful for the opportunity. And so there are podcasts, there are articles, video, and we started out the day just reminding everybody who's taking the challenge with us that race is made up. It is a social construct. It does not exist. And we were all taught as children that there were different races, but it is not true. And it was actually in the 90s under the Bill Clinton administration, and he funded the Genome Project, or his administration funded the Genome Project, that proved without a shadow of a doubt that we are 99.9% the same. But it's important to know that human hierarchy is how we have identified ourselves in structures for thousands of years. It's not a new thing. And but we must work together in order to fight against swinging back to creating new and different hierarchies around people and gender.
So with that said, I would encourage everyone to sign up, spread the word. It's a great program. So you'll be happy you did it. So thank you for doing that. Mm-hmm. I want to transition to the future. It's clear that you've been really involved in the early childhood space. My biggest question is, what do you think is needed to transform what you're doing and make early childhood education such a focus in the next 10 years?
Well, we're very much focused on the professionalism of the field. It is, we tend in this country to be dismissive of preschool. When you look at countries that are outperforming us, they do not. And so being able to professionalize and move our preschool teachers from the bottoms of the ranks to the top, which is where we believe they need to be, I think is just is really important. Several years ago, about 5 years ago, we made a decision to move our minimum wage at the YWCA to $15 an hour. We did that before the Cleveland Clinic and others, and you know it was not easy. And everyone, when you're a nonprofit, everyone has to support these types of changes. But we just felt like it was really important that we couldn't talk about empowering if we weren't in and involved in doing the best that we possibly could do. And we need to get to $18 an hour as quickly as we can to be able to support those that come in at an entry level in our organization. The professionalism, the way people think about early childhood education, the way we value early childhood education, we need to have a real seismic shift in that in order, structurally, in order to change the conditions and get a different outcome.
Do you believe what you're doing will help transform the neighborhoods in Northeast Ohio as well? If you're changing the lives of the children, won't that impact the neighborhoods?
You know, we think that we are part of a web with all of you that is doing that work. But you know, I have to say that you know, racism has a very powerful impact on the way we live, and our city is organized and structured here in Cleveland. And we have to acknowledge that, and we have to be able to name the barriers that exist in order to bring about change. Cleveland is one of the most segregated communities in the United States. We are not going to get to real change without breaking down those real and present barriers. And that's going to be hard, but possible, I believe.
Be great if it could happen. So I'm going to get a little broader here. So what do you think the future of the YWCA will be?
I think the future of the Y will be focused on continuing to grow our initiatives around race and gender. We are very much recommitted in our last strategic plan to women and girls of color, and believe that it is really important that when we lift the least of these, that everyone is successful in winning. So we're very much rededicated to our mission, and especially working and empowering and advancing women and girls of color.
Great. Something near and dear to our hearts is Say Yes, as we've already talked about. What do you think, from your perspective, Say Yes will have? What impact will it have on the local community?
Well, I think, you know, the early numbers, the year-over-year college entrance is incredible. I think it's what we'll continue to see are record numbers of young people entering into college from CMSD. But that isn't the data point I'm most interested in. That's the data point that we have now because it is so new. But we really need to be laser focused on young people who are graduating from college and successfully starting their careers. That is really going to be the true marker. And we've got to be able to welcome them back into Cleveland and welcome them into our organizations and create paths for advancement and success for these students coming into our community. And our track record in terms of how racism impacts that last leg, we've not always fared well there. And so while the students are away in college, we have work to do to be prepared to welcome them back, so that we're not seeing discrimination based upon the color of one's skin or based upon the gender of the individual.
A lot of the questions too that I've gotten kind of go hand in hand with one that we got earlier before we had this session. It's, how can people support, volunteer, advocate, or engage in early childhood education?
I think it's important to identify to our government, our mayor and our county executive, just the high importance of early childhood education, the importance to fully support so that it's well capitalized in our community, that high quality is the focus. I think it's important to advocate for professionalism and to understand and our own thinking about minimizing early childhood education. There are opportunities to engage in preschools and be involved. And there's just so many ways.
Well, that I think funding is going to be one of the big ones. So one of the questions from the audience was, what are your views of the grant funding practices? Do you believe goals of government and private grant funding are being achieved? And what changes would you like to see?
Several years ago, I had an opportunity to join the Jewish Federation of Cleveland on a business leaders trip to Israel. And one of the most impactful things for me was the way the Federation funds nonprofits in Israel. They take a 10 to 15 year view of their funding. 10 years. The local, and not just Ohio philanthropy, but it is definitely a 3-year cycle. 3 years. And you might get fully funded with your request in year 1. In year 2, you're asked to scale back. And in year 3, you're asked to scale back again. And this creates an ongoing cycle of starvation for nonprofits. They know what they're doing. We all know what's happening, and it really creates a lot of unbalance for nonprofits, and it's just not a great system. And so when you see, there certainly are organizations. Annie E. Casey in Baltimore is a national funder that supports some of our work that has a long view. There's certainly other Sisters of Charity come to mind when I think about their long view in terms of support, but it is rare. It is rare. And so you sort of constantly, there are much, we see other ways in Europe of funding non-governmental organizations that are having incredible success. We do provide services that are needed and met in the community, and we believe that we've got to get more. We just need to be more innovative and honest about how destructive the current funding models are for nonprofits.
Thank you. Well, we're almost out of time, and I would like to get to the rest of the questions, but I want to bring this full circle. So I apologize for those that we didn't get to. I'm sure, Margaret, you'll be here for a couple minutes afterwards. But bringing this full circle, a lot of you that know me know I have a favorite saying that says, everything happens for a reason. I think Margaret is a good example of that. If you think about Margaret's work in the for-profit world, it equipped her with the skills to take on the task of transforming the early childhood education process in our community. Then your leadership and dedication in the nonprofit world, especially at the YWCA, it's helped to shape the beliefs that change can happen. It's the key to the success of our community. And in addition to that, it's about education. Because if we don't change the education system, we're not going to succeed. But then, more importantly, when you moved here in 2007 and you took on the challenge of transforming the process for early childhood education, that showed your commitment to the community. But even more important than that, in your role as a leader at the YWCA, you've changed the lives of many individuals and a lot of children in our community. And for that is one of the reasons why we believe that you're clearly one of our leaders in education. So thank you for all you do for our community. You have made a difference, and we greatly appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
So thank you. So with that, we're almost out of time. I want to thank everyone for coming. If you'd like to see a replay of today's program, feel free to visit our website. It'll be up there probably by tomorrow or shortly thereafter. We will be circulating a survey, I ask that you please fill those out. It gives us great feedback in connection with what we're doing. And also, I hope you would give Margaret all 5s, because I have to report back that we did give her all 5s. So your help there would be greatly appreciated. And then I'm happy to report that the next Leaders in Education installment will be on April 28th. I think I have that date right. In which we will have a panel discussion of the presidents of Cleveland State University, Kent State University, and Walsh University. So we hope that you can join us for that discussion. So with that, thank you for your time, and have a great day.